The boardwalk of Puerto Esperanza bustled with activity that summer afternoon. Tourists and locals strolled carefree, enjoying the sea breeze and the salty aroma that permeated the air. Among the crowd, a small figure moved with determination, dodging passers-by with the grace of someone who knew every stone of the path. This was Cinia. At 10 years old, with a smile that hid more than it revealed, she made her way to her usual spot by the dolphin fountain. Carefully placing her wicker basket on the ground, she began to unpack her colorful treasure, exotic flowers of all imaginable sizes and colors. Fresh flowers. Take a little piece of paradise, she announced in a sing-song voice, attracting the attention of onlookers. An elderly couple stopped in front of her makeshift stall, admiring the variety on offer. "Look, Harold, aren't they beautiful?" the woman commented, pointing to a bouquet of purple orchids. Cinia, sensing their interest, wasted no time in approaching. "Those are orchid band, ma'am," she explained with a knowing wink. "They say they bring good luck and love." The old man chuckled. "After 50 years of marriage, I think we already have all the luck we need. Don't you think, Mildred?" Mildred playfully nudged her husband before turning back to Cinia. "You are a very bright young lady. What's your name, dear?" "Cinia, ma'am." "Like the flower. A beautiful name for a beautiful girl," replied Mildred with a warm smile. "Tell me, Cinia, where do you get such beautiful flowers?" For an instant, something akin to worry crossed the girl's face, but it disappeared so quickly that it could well have been a trick of the light. "Oh, I grow them myself," she responded in a mysterious tone that made the couple laugh. "I have a secret little garden." "Well, then we'll take these orchids," Harold decided, taking out his wallet. "How much are they, Cinia?" She named the price. As Harold counted the bills, Mildred couldn't help but ask, "Shouldn't you be in school at this hour, dear?" Cinia's smile faltered for a second. "Oh, I'm already out. I sell flowers after class," she explained quickly, handing the bouquet to Harold before the couple could ask any more questions. Cinia spotted a group of tourists approaching. "Enjoy your flowers. I have to attend to more customers. Have a nice day." And with that, she walked away with a light step, leaving the couple with a mixture of admiration and perplexity. The rest of the afternoon passed in a frenzy of sales and fleeting conversations. Cinia seemed to have a knack for knowing exactly what flower each customer needed, whether it was for a declaration of love, an apology, or simply to brighten a gray day. As the sun began to descend, dyeing the sky orange and pink, Cinia began to gather the few flowers she had left. It was then that a familiar voice startled her. "Cinia, you're leaving already?" Cinia turned to come face to face with Mateo, her classmate and self-proclaimed best friend. "Mateo, what are you doing here?" she asked, unable to completely hide her nervousness. The boy shrugged, distractedly kicking a pebble. "I was passing by with my older brother. I saw you and thought I'd say hello." He paused, looking at Cinia's almost empty basket. "Hey, why didn't you ever tell me you were selling flowers after class?" Cinia felt her heart race. She had not counted on meeting anyone she knew. It's a new thing. I'm saving up for a special gift," she improvised, avoiding Mateo's inquisitive gaze. "A gift for whom?" insisted the boy, genuinely curious. "For my mom," Cinia replied, and this time she didn't have to feign the emotion in her voice. "Her birthday's coming up." Mateo nodded, apparently satisfied with the explanation. "That's great, Cinia. You're an amazing daughter." He paused and then added shyly, "Hey, do you want me to walk you home? It's getting dark." Cinia felt a pang of guilt. Mateo had always been kind to her, and she hated having to lie to him. "Thanks, Mateo, but it's fine. My house is close by, and I know the way well." The boy's face clouded with disappointment, but he quickly recovered. "Okay, I understand. See you tomorrow in class, okay?" "Of course. See you tomorrow," Cinia replied, forcing a smile. She watched Mateo walk away, blending in with the crowd, and only then did she let out the breath she had been holding. She hated lying, especially to Mateo, but what choice did she have? With a sigh, she finished gathering her things and set off for home. The cobbled streets of Puerto Esperanza, normally a welcoming labyrinth for her, seemed more somber that night. Each shadow cast by the newly lit streetlights seemed to hide a secret, reflecting the weight of her own. Turning the corner onto her street, Cinia stopped short. In front of her house, a familiar figure was chatting animatedly with her neighbor, Mrs. Rodriguez. Her heart skipped a beat as she recognized Professor Lucia. And, and she is such a brilliant student, she heard the teacher say as she approached stealthily. I'm just a little worried that lately she seems a little distracted in class. Mrs. Rodriguez nodded worriedly. Yes, little Cinia has always been a delight, but now that you mention it, it's been a while since I've seen her playing in the park like she used to. Cinia held her breath, clinging to the wall so as not to be seen. What was Professor Lucia doing at her house? Did she suspect something? Well, I suppose her mother knows best how she is, the teacher continued. It's a shame she isn't home. I wanted to talk to her about... At that moment, a stray cat ran past Cinia, causing a crash as it knocked over a trash can. The two women turned in surprise, and Cinia knew it was now or never. Good evening, Professor Lucia. Hello, Mrs. Rodriguez, she greeted, emerging from the shadows with the most innocent smile she could muster. Cinia, exclaimed the teacher, visibly surprised. We were just talking about you. About me? The girl asked, feigning confusion. Is something wrong? Professor Lucia exchanged a look with Mrs. Rodriguez before answering. No, dear. I was just stopping by to talk to your mother. Is she home? Cinia felt a knot forming in her stomach. She hated lying. But what choice did she have? I'm sorry, Professor. Mom's working late tonight, she improvised, praying her voice wouldn't betray her. But I can give her a message if you like. Professor Lucia frowned, clearly not entirely convinced. I understand. Well, you could tell her that I'd like to speak with her when she has a moment. It's about your performance in class. Cinia nodded vigorously, relieved that the conversation was coming to an end. Of course, Professor. I'll tell her as soon as I see her. Very well then. Have a good night. Cinia said goodbye. The professor did not leave without first casting one last, inquisitive look at the front of the house. Cinia waited until Professor Lucia turned the corner before letting out a sigh of relief. However, her peace of mind was short-lived. Cinia, dear? Mrs. Rodriguez's voice startled her. Is everything all right at home? The girl turned to her neighbor, meeting a look of genuine concern that almost made her break. For a moment, she considered telling her everything. About her mother, about the flowers, about the fear that consumed her every night. But she couldn't. She mustn't. Everything is perfectly fine, Mrs. Rodriguez, she replied with a smile she hoped was convincing. We've just been a little busy lately. The old woman watched her for a long moment before nodding slowly. All right, dear, but remember I'm here if you need anything. Okay, thanks, Mrs. Rodriguez. Good night. With that, Cinia hurried into her house, closing the door behind her and leaning against it. The silence that greeted her was deafening. Mom? She called softly, though she knew she wouldn't get an answer. With tired steps, she went to the kitchen. On the table, a note written in shaky handwriting awaited her. Cinia, my love, I had to go to the hospital for some tests. There's food in the refrigerator. Don't wait up. I love you, Mom. Cinia read the note over and over again, as if the words might change if she looked at them long enough. Finally, she dropped it on the table and went to the refrigerator. Sure enough, there was a plate with her favorite dinner, spaghetti and meatballs. But her hunger was gone, replaced by a lump in her throat that threatened to choke her. Instead of eating, Cinia went to her room and pulled a small shoebox from under her bed. She opened it carefully, revealing a pile of neatly organized bills and coins. She added the day's earnings and began to count. 235, 240, she murmured to herself as she stacked the bills. When she finished, she stared at the grand total with a mixture of pride and despair. It was far more money than any girl her age could dream of, but it was still a drop in the ocean compared to what they needed. A sob escaped her lips before she could contain it. What if it wasn't enough? What if, despite all her efforts, she couldn't save her mother? The ringing of the telephone abruptly pulled her out of her thoughts. She ran to answer, her heart pounding furiously in her chest. Hello, she answered, trying to keep her voice from trembling. Cinia? It's me, honey. Her mother's voice, though weak, was like a balm to her nerves. Mom, are you okay? When are you coming home? There was a pause on the other end of the line, and when her mother spoke again, Cinia could detect the weariness in her voice. I'm okay, my love. The doctors want to run some more tests, so I'm going to stay at the hospital tonight. Will you be okay alone? Cinia squeezed her eyes shut, fighting back the tears that threatened to spill. Of course, Mom. Don't worry about me. That's my brave girl, Cinia. Her mother's voice softened. You know I love you more than anything in the world, right? I love you too, Mom, Cinia replied, her voice cracking slightly. Promise me you won't worry too much? Everything's going to be all right. Cinia nodded even though her mother couldn't see her. I promise. After a few more words of comfort and love, the call ended. Cinia stared at the phone in silence, the weight of the world settling on her small shoulders. With renewed determination, she went back to her room and took out her sketchbook. In it, she had sketched dozens of designs for bouquets and floral arrangements, each one more elaborate than the last. If I want to make more money, I'll have to be more creative, she thought. As she worked on a new design, her mind wandered. She thought about Matteo and how she hated lying to him. She thought about Professor Lucia and how she would have to be even more careful in class. And above all, she thought about her mother, alone in that cold hospital room. The sound of a car horn in the street startled her, making her jump. She glanced at the clock and was surprised to see it was already midnight. With a sigh, she put her things away and got ready for bed, knowing that tomorrow would be another day full of challenges. The next morning came too soon. Cinia woke to the sound of her alarm, feeling as if she'd barely closed her eyes. She dressed quickly, grabbed a hasty breakfast, and ran off to school. Arriving at the courtyard, she spotted Matteo waiting for her in their usual spot, under the large mango tree. Cinia, he called, waving his hand. Over here! Cinia approached, forcing a smile. Good morning, Matteo. The boy looked at her with concern. Are you okay? You have dark circles under your eyes. I'm fine, she replied quickly. I just didn't sleep very well last night. Matteo nodded, unconvinced. Hey, how about if we grab some ice cream after class today? My brother gave me some money. The school bell interrupted his proposal. Cinia had never been so grateful for its sound. I'm sorry, Matteo. I have to help my mom with something after class, she lied, hating herself for it. Maybe some other time. Before Matteo could respond, Cinia hurried towards her classroom. Upon entering, she came face to face with Professor Lucia. Good morning, Cinia, the teacher greeted, but her smile didn't reach her eyes. Were you able to talk to your mother last night? Cinia felt her mouth go dry. Yes, Professor, but she was very tired. She said she would call today. Professor Lucia watched her for a moment, as if she were trying to read something in her face. I understand. Well, take a seat. Class is about to begin. The morning dragged by slowly. Cinia struggled to concentrate, her mind torn between the lessons, her mother at the hospital, and plans for her next flower sale. During recess, while the other children played and laughed, Cinia sat alone in a corner of the courtyard, scribbling new bouquet designs in her notebook. She was so engrossed that she didn't notice Lucia approaching until the teacher sat down next to her. Those are some very pretty drawings, Cinia, she commented, looking over the girl's shoulder. I didn't know you were so interested in flowers. Cinia slammed her notebook shut, her heart racing. Thank you, Professor. It's just a hobby. Lucia looked at her with a mixture of concern and curiosity. Cinia, is there anything you want to talk about? You know you can confide in me, right? For a moment, Cinia considered telling her everything. The weight of the secret was getting heavier by the day, but the memory of her mother, frail and pale in that hospital bed, made her keep her mouth shut. No, Professor, everything's fine, she replied, avoiding her gaze. I'm just helping. At that moment, a familiar voice interrupted the tense conversation. Cinia, I finally found you. Matteo came running up, a smile on his face that faded when he saw the scene before him. Hello, Professor Lucia? He looked in confusion from Cinia to the teacher. Is something wrong? Professor Lucia straightened up, her gaze fixed on Cinia. That's what I'm trying to find out. Cinia, Matteo said, his voice soft but firm. I think it's time we had a serious conversation. Why don't you come with me? We can talk somewhere quieter. Panic seized Cinia. If she went with Professor Lucia, everything would be revealed. Her mother would find out, and all her effort would have been in vain. I can't, she stammered. I have to finish selling these flowers. I promised my mom's friend I would. Sensing the tension in the air, Matteo intervened. Professor, if you like, I can help Cinia finish selling the flowers. That way you can talk afterwards. Professor Lucia looked from Matteo to Cinia and finally sighed. Very well, but Cinia, first thing tomorrow morning, I want to see you in my office. And this time, I won't take no for an answer. Understood? Cinia nodded, a lump forming in her throat. Yes, Professor. When the teacher walked away, Matteo turned to Cinia, his gaze full of questions. Cinia, what's going on? Why did you lie to Professor Lucia about helping your mom's friend? Cinia felt tears welling up. Matteo had been her best friend for as long as she could remember. If there was anyone she could trust, it was him. Matteo, she began, but the words caught in her throat. Seeing her distress, the boy took her hand. It's okay, Cinia. You can tell me anything. We're friends, remember? Those were the words Cinia needed. Like a dam breaking, the words started to flow. My mom? She's sick, Matteo. Very sick, she whispered, tears streaming freely down her cheeks. She has cancer, and she needs special treatment, but it's very expensive. And I'm trying to raise the money by selling flowers. Matteo stared at her, his eyes wide as he processed the information. Cinia, I had no idea, he finally said, squeezing her hand. Why didn't you tell me before? I could have helped you. Cinia shook her head. I didn't want anyone to know. My mom, she doesn't know I'm doing this. She thinks the money is from an inheritance from my grandmother. Matteo frowned. But Cinia, this is too much for you to handle alone. You need help, don't you? Cinia exclaimed, louder than she intended. I can't tell anyone else. If my mom finds out, she'll worry even more, and that could make her condition worse. Matteo looked at her for a long moment, clearly conflicted. Okay, he finally said. I won't tell anyone, but on one condition. What? Asked Cinia, wiping away her tears. Let me help you. I can sell flowers with you after school. Between the two of us, we'll raise the money faster. Cinia felt a surge of gratitude towards her friend. Matteo, I can't ask you to do that. You're not asking, he interrupted with a smile. I'm offering. That's what friends do. Not for the first time in weeks, Cinia felt a tiny spark of hope ignite in her chest. Thank you, Matteo, she said, impulsively hugging him. You're the best friend anyone could ask for. The boy blushed slightly, but returned the hug. That's what we're here for. Now how about we finish selling these flowers? With Matteo's help, the rest of the afternoon flew by. Between the two of them, they managed to sell all the remaining flowers, and they even had time to plan how they would divide the work in the days ahead. As the sun began to set, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink, Cinia and Matteo started to pack up their things. Hey, Cinia, said Matteo, as they folded the tablecloth they had used to display the flowers. What are you going to do about Professor Lucia? She'll want answers tomorrow. Cinia sighed, the weight of reality settling back on her shoulders. I don't know, Matteo. I can't tell her the truth, but I can't think of a believable lie either. Matteo thought for a moment. What if we tell her a half-truth? We could say you're trying to make money for a special gift for your mom. We wouldn't be lying exactly, right? Cinia considered the idea. It wasn't perfect, but it was better than nothing. It could work, she finally said. At least it would buy us some time. As they walked back home, Cinia couldn't help but feel a little lighter. Having Matteo by her side made everything seem a little less overwhelming. Thanks again, Matteo, she said, when they reached the corner where their paths diverged. I don't know what I'd do without you. The boy smiled, a slight blush coloring his cheeks. That's what friends are for, Cinia. See you tomorrow at school. Cinia watched him walk away, feeling a mixture of gratitude and guilt. She hated involving Matteo in her problems, but at the same time, she felt incredibly relieved not to be alone in this. When she got home, she was surprised to see a light on in the kitchen window. Her heart racing, she opened the door. Mom, she called out, entering cautiously. Azalea was sitting at the kitchen table, pale but smiling. Hello, my love, she greeted, holding out her arms towards her daughter. I missed you. Cinia ran to her, hugging her tightly, careful not to hurt her. Mom, I didn't know you were coming back today. Are you okay? What did the doctor say? Azalea stroked her daughter's hair, her smile faltering slightly. I'm okay, honey, just a little tired. The doctors, well, they want to run some more tests next week. Cinia felt a knot forming in her stomach. More tests were never a good sign. But, but the treatment is working, right? She asked, trying to keep the tremor out of her voice. Azalea hesitated for a moment before answering. They're adjusting it, but don't worry, my love. Everything's going to be all right. Cinia nodded, not entirely convinced. She knew her mother was trying to protect her, but she hated being kept in the dark. Mom, she began, considering for a moment telling her everything about the flowers and the money she was raising. Yes, honey, Azalea asked, looking at her curiously. Cinia bit her lip. She couldn't do it. She couldn't burden her mother with more worries. Nothing. I love you very much. Azalea smiled, kissing her daughter's forehead. I love you too, my little flower, more than anything in the world. That night, as her mother slept in the next room, Cinia lay awake, her mind a whirlwind of thoughts. She had to find a way to raise more money, and fast. The treatment clearly wasn't working as they had hoped, and time was running out. With renewed determination, she pulled out her sketchbook and began to sketch new bouquet designs. If she was going to sell more flowers, she would need fresh and appealing ideas. She was so engrossed in her task that she didn't notice the hours pass. When she finally looked up, startled by the light filtering through her window, she realized she had spent the entire night awake. With a sigh, she put her drawings away and got ready for another day of school. Today, she would have to face Professor Lucia, and she could only hope Mateo's idea would work. As she walked to school, she mentally rehearsed the story she would tell the teacher. A special gift for Mom, just trying to earn some extra money, nothing to worry about. She repeated these phrases to herself over and over again, like a mantra. When she arrived at school, she saw Mateo waiting for her at the entrance. Cinia, he called, waving. Ready for today? Cinia nodded, although she felt butterflies in her stomach. I think so. Remember the plan? Mateo smiled, giving her a reassuring squeeze on the shoulder. Everything's going to be all right, Cinia. I'm here for you. Together, they made their way to Professor Lucia's office. Cinia took a deep breath before knocking on the door. Come in, the teacher's voice called out from inside. Cinia and Mateo entered, finding Professor Lucia sitting behind her desk, a worried expression on her face. Good morning, Cinia, Mateo, she greeted, gesturing for them to take a seat. I'm glad you came, Cinia, and I see you've brought moral support. Cinia felt a wave of gratitude towards Mateo. Professor, I wanted to explain about yesterday, she began, her voice barely a whisper. Professor Lucia leaned forward, her expression softening. I'm listening, Cinia. Taking a deep breath, Cinia began to tell the modified version of the story they had planned. You see, Professor, my mom has been a little sick lately, and I wanted to get her a special gift, something to cheer her up. But, well, I don't have much money, so I thought I could sell flowers. Professor Lucia listened attentively, her expression a mixture of understanding and doubt. I understand your intention, Cinia, and it's admirable. But Rena, why didn't you tell me before? Why all the secrecy? Cinia looked down, feeling tears welling up. I didn't want anyone to worry, and I was afraid that if I said it out loud, it would somehow make it more real. Seeing his friend's distress, Mateo intervened. Professor, it was my idea that Cinia sell flowers. I've been helping her. Professor Lucia looked at Mateo in surprise. Is that true, Mateo? The boy nodded, although Cinia could see the slight tremor in his hands. Yes, Professor, we thought it would be a good way to make some extra money without bothering our parents. Professor Lucia leaned back in her chair, processing the information. I appreciate your honesty, children, she finally said, but you must understand that this type of activity, however well-intentioned, can be dangerous if not done properly. Have you considered the risks of selling flowers on the street? Cinia and Mateo exchanged nervous glances. Not really, Cinia admitted. I just wanted to do something nice for my mom. Professor Lucia sighed, her expression softening. I understand your motivation, Cinia, and it's admirable. But as your teacher, I have a responsibility to make sure you're safe. What I mean is, I can't allow you to continue selling flowers on the street unsupervised. It's too dangerous. Panic seized Cinia. If she couldn't sell flowers, how would she get the money for her mother's treatment? But Professor, Mateo interjected, what if we found a safer way to do it? Professor Lucia raised an eyebrow, intrigued. What do you have in mind, Mateo? The boy straightened up in his seat, his mind working furiously. Well, what if we sell the flowers here at school? We could set up a stand during recess, or after school. That way, we'd be in a safe and supervised place. Cinia looked at her friend in amazement. She hadn't thought of that possibility. Professor Lucia considered the idea for a moment. That's an interesting proposal, she finally said. I would have to discuss it with the principal, of course, but it could work. Cinia felt a spark of hope ignite in her chest. Really? You would let us do that? The teacher smiled slightly. I'm not promising anything yet, Cinia, but if we can organize it in a safe and responsible way, I think it could be a good experience for you. Thank you, Professor, Cinia exclaimed, feeling a weight lift from her shoulders. Not so fast, Professor Lucia warned. There are conditions. First, we'll need your parents' permission. Cinia's heart sank. How was she going to get her mother's permission without revealing the real reason behind her flower selling? Second, the teacher continued, all the money you earn must be supervised by a responsible adult. I don't want you handling large amounts of cash on your own. Mateo nodded vigorously. That sounds fair, Professor. Right, Cinia? Cinia, still worried about the permission issue, nodded absent-mindedly. Yeah, of course. Professor Lucia looked at them both with a mixture of pride and concern. I'm impressed by your initiative, children. But remember, you can always come to me if you need help. You don't have to carry this all on your own. Cinia felt a pang of guilt. If only the teacher knew the real reason behind all of this. Thank you, Professor, she said, forcing a smile. We'll remember that. When they left the office, Mateo did a little jump of joy. It worked. I can't believe it worked. Cinia, however, didn't share his enthusiasm. Mateo, how am I going to get my mom's permission? If she finds out about this, everything will be ruined. The boy stopped, his smile fading. Oh, I hadn't thought of that, he admitted. But hey, we'll figure something out. We always do, right? Cinia nodded, though she wasn't convinced. As they walked to their classroom, her mind worked frantically, trying to find a solution to this new obstacle. The rest of the school day passed in a blur. Cinia could barely concentrate on her lessons, her mind torn between worrying about her mother and the permission dilemma. When the dismissal bell rang, Cinia and Mateo headed to the boardwalk, as usual. But this time, instead of setting up their flower stall, they sat on a bench facing the sea. So what's the plan? Asked Mateo, looking at his friend with concern. Cinia sighed, burying her face in her hands. I don't know, Mateo. I can't tell my mom about the flowers. She'd worry too much. What if, Mateo began, but he was interrupted by a familiar voice. Hello, children. What are you doing here looking so thoughtful? Cinia looked up to see the kind smile of Don Ramon, the elderly florist, approaching, his flower cart in tow. Hello, Don Ramon, Cinia greeted, trying to force a smile. Just thinking. The old man eyed them curiously. Those long faces tell me there's trouble in paradise. Want to tell old Ramon what's going on? Cinia looked at Mateo, who nodded encouragingly. Taking a deep breath, Cinia told her story, this time without omitting any details. Don Ramon listened attentively, his expression shifting from surprise to understanding, and finally to determination. Oh, my little florist, he said when Cinia finished, placing a wrinkled hand on hers. You've been carrying such a heavy burden all alone, but not anymore. What do you mean? Asked Cinia, confused. Don Ramon smiled, a mischievous twinkle in his eyes. I mean, I have an idea. What would you say if I offered you a job? A real job, at my nursery? Cinia stared at him, her eyes wide. But why would you do that? Because you have talent, child, Don Ramon replied with a chuckle, and because we all need a little help now and then. Mateo, who had been listening silently, interjected. That's perfect, Cinia. You can tell your mom you got a real job. You wouldn't be lying. Cinia felt a lump forming in her throat. Don Ramon, I don't know what to say. The old man patted her hand. You don't have to say anything, child. Just accept help when it's offered. And who knows, maybe together we can make something beautiful bloom out of this whole situation. For the first time in weeks, Cinia felt a genuine smile spread across her face. Thank you, Don Ramon. Thank you truly. As the sun began to set over the sea, painting the sky in shades of pink and gold, Cinia felt a new hope blossom in her heart. Maybe, just maybe, things were starting to look up. But what Cinia didn't know was that her journey was just beginning, and that the toughest trials were yet to come. The aroma of damp earth and fresh flowers filled Don Ramon's greenhouse. Cinia moved among the rows of plants with the grace of someone who had found her place in the world. Her nimble fingers arranged stems and petals, creating arrangements that seemed to come to life under her touch. Cinia? Don Ramon's voice echoed from the entrance of the greenhouse. How's that special order for the wedding coming along? The girl looked up from her work, a smile brightening her face. Almost ready, Don Ramon. Just adding a few finishing touches. The old man approached, admiring the arrangement with a critical eye. Impressive, child. You have a gift, you know, he said, ruffling her hair affectionately. At this rate, you'll be running the business yourself soon. Cinia laughed, although a hint of worry clouded her gaze. Thanks, Don Ramon. But do you think it will be enough? For Mom's treatment? Don Ramon interrupted her with a gentle gesture. One flower at a time, Cinia. One flower at a time. Now, why don't you take a break? Your friend Mateo just arrived. As if on cue, Mateo's cheerful voice echoed from the shop. Cinia, where are you? I have news. Cinia pulled off her gardening gloves and ran towards her friend's voice. She found him in the shop, practically jumping with excitement. Mateo, what's going on? You look like you're going to burst. The boy took a dramatic breath before blurting out. We got it, Cinia. The principal approved our flower stand at school. Cinia felt her breath catch in her throat. Seriously? But how? Mateo began to explain, the words tumbling out in a rush. Well, after Professor Lucia spoke to him, they decided it could be a good project for the entrepreneurship class. They're going to let us set up a stand during recess and after school. They even said we could use some of the profits for a class trip. Cinia blinked, trying to process the information. That's incredible, Mateo. But what? What? He asked, his smile faltering slightly. What about the money for my mom's treatment? Cinia whispered, glancing nervously towards the greenhouse to make sure Don Ramon couldn't hear her. Mateo's smile turned conspiratorial. Ah, that. Don't worry, I have a plan. We can split the profits, one part for the school trip, and another, well, for our special project. Cinia felt a wave of gratitude towards her friend. Mateo, you're a genius, but isn't that a bit dishonest? The boy shrugged. We're selling flowers and making people happy. What's dishonest about that? Besides, technically, we'll be using some of the money for the trip. We'll just also be using it for something more important. Before Cinia could respond, the shop bell chimed, announcing the arrival of a customer. Welcome to Flores del Alma, Don Ramon greeted, emerging from the greenhouse. How can I help you today? An elegant woman entered, followed closely by a girl who appeared to be Cinia's age. Good afternoon, the woman greeted. We're looking for an arrangement for a special dinner. It's my husband's birthday, and I want to surprise him. Don Ramon smiled broadly. You've come to the right place. Cinia, why don't you show the ladies some of your special arrangements? Cinia nodded, grateful for the distraction from her worries. Of course. Right this way, please. As Cinia led the woman toward the arrangements, she noticed the girl following silently, observing everything with curious eyes. These are some of our most popular arrangements for special occasions, Cinia explained, pointing to a display of beautiful bouquets. Does your husband have a favorite flower? The woman considered the question for a moment. He loves sunflowers. He says they remind him of his childhood in the countryside. Cinia smiled, an idea forming in her mind. I have just what you need. Give me a moment. With swift, expert movements, Cinia began to create a custom arrangement. Bright sunflowers formed the centerpiece, surrounded by delicate wildflowers and green leaves that evoked a field in midsummer. The girl who had accompanied them watched in fascination. How do you do that? She finally asked, breaking her silence. It's like magic. Cinia laughed softly. It's not magic, just practice. Do you want to try? The girl nodded enthusiastically. Cinia handed her a flower and showed her how to place it in the arrangement. I'm Cinia, by the way. She introduced herself as they worked. What's your name? Iris, the girl replied shyly. Like the flower. It's a beautiful name, Cinia commented. You know, irises symbolize wisdom and courage. Iris's eyes lit up. Really, that's so cool. Do you know the meanings of all the flowers? Cinia, happy to share her knowledge, replied, Most of them. It's part of what makes working with flowers so special. Each one has its own story to tell. As they continued working on the arrangement, Cinia noticed that Iris's mother was watching them with a mixture of surprise and approval. I've never seen Iris so interested in anything, the woman commented. She's usually very shy around strangers. Cinia smiled. Flowers have that effect on people. They connect us in a special way. Finally, the arrangement was finished. It was a burst of color and life, with the sunflowers taking center stage, but perfectly complemented by the flowers Iris had helped to arrange. It's perfect, Iris's mother gasped. My husband will love it. While Don Ramon handled the payment, Iris turned to Cinia with pleading eyes. Can I come back another day? Will you teach me more about flowers? Cinia glanced at Don Ramon, who nodded with a smile. Of course, Iris. You're welcome anytime. After Iris and her mother left, promising to return soon, Mateo approached Cinia. That was amazing, Cinia. You have a real knack for this. Cinia blushed slightly. Thanks, Mateo. It's just... flowers make me feel at peace, you know? Like for a moment, everything is right in the world. Don Ramon, who had been listening, came over and placed a hand on Cinia's shoulder. That, my little florist, is what we call passion, and it's the secret ingredient of every great florist. The rest of the afternoon passed in a blur of customers, floral arrangements, and shared laughter with Mateo and Don Ramon. When it came time to close, Cinia was surprised to realize how much time had passed. Oh no, she exclaimed, glancing at the clock. It's so late. Mom must be worried. Don Ramon reassured her. Don't worry, child. I called her a while ago to let her know you were helping with a special order. She was very proud of you. Cinia felt a mixture of relief and guilt. She hated lying to her mother, but she knew it was necessary. Thanks, Don Ramon, for everything. The old man winked at her. That's what friends are for. Now go home and get some rest. Tomorrow's going to be a big day with the new stand at school. Cinia nodded, gathered her things, and said goodbye to Mateo and Don Ramon. As she walked home, her mind was a whirlwind of emotions. Excitement for the new project at school, worry for her mother, gratitude towards her friends, and a flicker of hope that refused to be extinguished. When she arrived home, she found her mother in the kitchen preparing dinner. Mom! Cinia exclaimed, running to hug her. You shouldn't be on your feet so long. I can make dinner. Azalea smiled, returning her daughter's embrace. I'm all right, honey. I feel more energetic today. Besides, I wanted to celebrate your first official day at your new job. Cinia felt a pang of guilt. Mom, you didn't have to. Nonsense, interrupted Azalea. My girl is growing up and helping out at home. That deserves a celebration. Now tell me all about your day. As they were having dinner, Cinia told her mother an edited version of her day. She told her about the arrangement for Iris and her mother's wedding, but carefully omitted any mention of the stall at school or the true purpose behind her work. I'm so proud of you, Cinia, said Azalea, her eyes shining with unshed tears. You're so strong and brave. Sometimes I wonder where you get all that strength from. Cinia felt a lump in her throat. From you, Mom. I learned it all from you. That night after her mother went to sleep, Cinia took out her secret notebook. In it, she kept a meticulous record of every cent she earned and how much was left for her mother's treatment. As she updated the figures, she couldn't help but feel a mixture of hope and anxiety. They were making progress, but would it be enough? And at what cost? The next morning, Cinia woke up with a mix of excitement and nervousness. Today was the big day, the launch of the flower stall at school. She dressed quickly and went down to breakfast, finding her mother already in the kitchen. Good morning, Mom, she greeted, giving her a kiss on the cheek. How are you feeling today? Azalea smiled, though Cindy noted the shadows under her eyes. I'm fine, honey, just a little tired. Excited for your day at school? Cinia nodded, trying to control her nervousness. Yes, we have a special project today. What's it about? Asked Azalea curiously. Senia hesitated for a moment before answering. It's, it's a surprise. I'll tell you all about it tonight, okay? Azalea looked at her with a mixture of curiosity and concern, but didn't press further. All right, honey, have a good day. Senia left the house with a heavy heart. She hated keeping things from her mother, but she kept telling herself it was for a good cause. At school, she found Mateo waiting for her at the entrance, practically bouncing with excitement. Sin, you finally made it. Come on, we have to set everything up before the bell rings. Together, they hurried to the schoolyard, where Professor Lucia was already waiting for them next to a folding table and several buckets full of water. Good morning, you two, greeted the professor with a smile. Ready for your big debut? Senia nodded, feeling the butterflies in her stomach multiply. I think so, Professor. Thank you for helping us with this. It's a pleasure, Senia. I'm very proud of you both for taking this initiative. As they prepared the stall, arranging the flowers in beautiful arrangements and preparing signs with prices, Senia couldn't help but feel a mixture of excitement and guilt. What would Professor Lucia think if she knew the real reason behind all this? Little by little, students began to arrive. At first, many passed by, casting curious glances but not stopping. But then, something magical happened. A senior girl approached, attracted by a bouquet of daisies. How much for this one? She asked, pointing to the arrangement. Senia smiled, coming into her element. That's $5. Daisies symbolize innocence and purity, explained Senia enthusiastically. They're perfect for brightening the day of someone special. The girl smiled, taking out her wallet. I'll take it. It's my best friend's birthday, and I think she'll love it. While Senia carefully wrapped the bouquet, Mateo handled the money with comical seriousness. Thank you for your purchase, he said, imitating the tone of a professional salesperson. Come again soon. The transaction caught the attention of other students, and soon a small crowd formed around the stall. Hey, Senia, called a boy from her class. Do you have anything I can give my mom? It's her birthday tomorrow and I forgot to buy her something. Senia laughed, recognizing the desperation in his voice. Don't worry, I have just what you need, she said, selecting a beautiful bouquet of pink carnations. Pink carnations symbolize maternal love. Your mom will love it. The boy sighed with relief, paying quickly. You've saved my life, Sin. I owe you one. As the morning progressed, the stall became the center of attention at school. Students from all grades approached, some out of curiosity, others looking for the perfect gift for a loved one. Senia found herself sharing stories about the meaning of flowers, advising on which arrangement would be best for each occasion, and even teaching some interested students how to make small bouquets. This is incredible, Sin, exclaimed Mateo during a brief lull. Look how much we've already sold. Senia nodded, a mixture of excitement and worry on her face. I know, it's great. But do you think it will be enough? Before Matthew could answer, a familiar voice interrupted them. Enough for what? Senia turned to come face to face with Iris, the girl she had met at Don Ramon's shop. Iris, what are you doing here? The girl smiled shyly. My mom enrolled me in this school. Today is my first day, she explained, gazing in awe at the flower stall. I can't believe you have a flower stall here. It's amazing. Senia felt a surge of affection for the girl. Do you want to help us? I could teach you how to make some simple arrangements. Iris's eyes lit up. Seriously? I would love to. Soon Iris became an enthusiastic helper, learning quickly and charming customers with her sweetness. Professor Lucia, who had been watching from afar, approached with an approving smile. I'm impressed, you guys. You're not just selling flowers, you're creating a real community here. Senia felt a pang of guilt at the compliment. Thank you, Professor. We just want to do something good. Professor Lucia felt her expression turning more serious. Senia, can I speak with you for a moment in private? Senia's heart skipped a beat. Had she discovered something? Of course, Professor, she replied, trying to remain calm. They moved a little away from the stall, leaving Mateo and Iris in charge. Senia, Professor Lucia began softly, I've noticed that you seem worried lately. I know you said everything was all right at home, but is there something more you want to tell me? Senia felt a lump forming in her throat. For a moment, she considered telling the professor everything about her mother, about the treatment, about the real reason behind the flower stall, but the fear of the consequences stopped her. She began, struggling to find the right words. It's just that I want this to go well. It's important to me. Professor Lucia looked at her for a long moment, as if she could see through her lie. I understand, she finally said. Just remember, Cinia, you don't have to carry everything by yourself. If you ever need to talk, my door is always open. Cinia felt a mixture of relief and guilt. Thank you, Professor. I'll remember that. When they returned to the stall, they found Mateo and Iris in the middle of a lively discussion about the meaning of different colored roses. I'm telling you, blue roses exist, insisted Iris. Mateo shook his head. Impossible. Roses can't be naturally blue. Cinia laughed, grateful for the distraction. Actually, you're both right, she intervened. Blue roses don't exist naturally, but they can be created artificially by dyeing white roses. Iris smiled triumphantly, while Mateo rolled his eyes good-naturedly. The rest of the day passed in a whirlwind of sales, laughter, and impromptu lessons about flowers. When the dismissal bell finally rang, Cinia was surprised to realize how much they had sold. Look at this, Sim, exclaimed Mateo, showing her the cash box. We've made a fortune. Cinia felt a mix of excitement and anxiety. It's incredible, Mateo, but what are we going to do with all this money? Before Mateo could answer, Professor Lucia approached. Excellent work, you two. I'm very proud of you, she said with a smile. Now how about we count the money and keep it in the school safe until we decide what to do with it? Cinia and Mateo exchanged panicked looks. Couldn't we keep it, Professor? Asked Mateo, trying to sound casual. You know, to reinvest in more flowers. Professor Lucia frowned. I'm afraid it wouldn't be appropriate for you to handle so much money on your own. Don't worry, it will be safe in the safe, and we can discuss its use at the next student council meeting. Cinia's heart sank. How were they going to use the money for her mother's treatment if it was locked away in the school safe? But Professor, she began, desperate for a solution. At that moment, a familiar voice interrupted the conversation. Cinia? What a surprise to find you here. Cinia turned to see her mother approaching with a smile. Panic seized her. What was her mother doing at school, and how was she going to explain the flower stall? Mom, what are you doing here? She asked, trying to remain calm. Azalea smiled, though Cinia noticed she seemed paler than usual. I had an appointment with the doctor nearby and thought I'd stop by and pick you up, she explained, looking curiously at the flower stall. But I see you've been busy. Is this the surprise project you were telling me about? Cinia felt the world stop around her. Her mother, Professor Lucia, the money in the box. Everything seemed to collide in a moment of inevitable truth. How was she going to get out of this without her whole carefully constructed plan falling apart? Cinia felt time slow down as her mind raced, searching for a way out. She looked at Mateo for help, but her friend seemed as stunned as she was. Yes, Mom, she finally managed to say, her voice barely a whisper. It's a school project. We're raising funds for a class trip. Professor Lucia, noticing the tension in the air, stepped forward with a kind smile. You must be Cinia's mother. I'm Professor Lucia, she introduced herself, extending her hand. Your daughter has done a wonderful job with this project. You should be very proud. Azalea shook the professor's hand, an expression of confusion and pride mixing on her face. Thank you, Professor. I'm surprised. Cinia hadn't told me much about this. Guilt twisted in Cinia's stomach like a snake. She hated lying to her mother, but what choice did she have? I'm sorry, Mom, she said, trying to maintain her composure. I wanted it to be a surprise. I thought you'd be happy to see me doing something productive after school. Azalea looked at her daughter with a mix of love and concern. Oh, honey, of course I'm happy. But you didn't have to hide it from me. You know you can tell me anything, right? Cinia nodded, tears threatening to spill. I know, Mom. It's just... Just then, Iris, who had been silently observing the scene, stepped forward. Mrs., you're Cinia's mom? she asked with childlike enthusiasm. Your daughter is amazing. She's taught me all about flowers and their meanings. I know that red roses mean love and passion, and yellow ones mean friendship. Iris's unexpected intervention broke the tension. Azalea chuckled softly, clearly charmed by the girl's enthusiasm. Well, it seems my Cinia has become quite the flower expert, she said, looking at her daughter with a newfound admiration. Where did you learn all that, honey? Cinia, grateful for the distraction, seized the opportunity. Oh, you know, a little bit here and there. Don Ramon has been teaching me a lot at the shop. Professor Lucia, who had been observing the exchange with interest, interjected again. Mrs., would you like to see some of the arrangements Cinia has made? They are truly impressive. As Professor Lucia led Azalea away to show her the arrangements, Mateo sidled up to Cinia. That was close, he whispered. What are we going to do about the money? Cinia shook her head, feeling overwhelmed. I don't know, Mateo. We can't let them keep it in the school safe. But we can't just take it without raising suspicions either. At that moment, Don Ramon appeared at the entrance of the schoolyard, his familiar figure bringing a wave of relief to Cinia. Don Ramon, she exclaimed, running towards him. What are you doing here? The old man smiled, his eyes twinkling mischievously. Well, little one, I thought I'd stop by and see how your big school debut was going, and it seems I arrived just in time. Cinia looked at him in confusion. In time for what? Don Ramon winked before approaching the group. Good afternoon, everyone, he greeted cheerfully. I see Cinia's project has been a resounding success. As her boss at the flower shop, I couldn't be more proud. Professor Lucia looked at him with interest. You're the owner of the flower shop where Cinia works? Don Ramon nodded. That's right, and as part of our collaborative agreement with the school, I'd like to offer to handle the project's finances. We can keep the money safe in the shop safe and keep detailed records for the school. How does that sound? Cinia held her breath, barely daring to hope. Could this be the solution to their dilemma? Professor Lucia seemed to consider the offer for a moment before slowly nodding. Well, if you're willing to take on that responsibility, I suppose it could work, as long as we have a clear record of all transactions. Of course, Professor, Don Ramon beamed. Everything will be transparent and professional. You can count on me. While the adults discussed the details, Cinia felt a weight lift from her shoulders. She glanced at Mateo, who returned a relieved grin. However, their relief was short-lived. Azalea, who had been listening to the conversation, turned to her daughter with an expression Cinia couldn't decipher. Cinia, honey, can I speak with you for a moment? Alone? Cinia's heart plummeted. Had her mother suspected something after all? Was everything about to fall apart? With trembling steps, she followed her mother to a quiet corner of the courtyard. Azalea looked at her for a long moment before speaking. Cinia, I know something is going on, she finally said, her voice soft but firm. You've been acting strangely lately, and now all of this? I want you to be honest with me. What's really going on? Cinia felt the world stop around her. This was the moment she had both dreaded and secretly yearned for. The truth was about to come out, for better or worse. With a shaky sigh, Cinia looked into her mother's eyes and began to speak. Mom, there's something I need to tell you, Cinia began, her voice barely a whisper. All of this, the flowers, the work with Don Ramon, the stall at school, it's not just a school project. Azalea frowned, concern etched on her face. What do you mean, honey? Cinia took a deep breath, gathering her courage. I've been doing it for you, Mom, for your treatment. Azalea's eyes widened, shock and confusion on her face. My treatment? But Cinia, how? Why? I overheard you talking to the doctor a few weeks ago, Cinia confessed, tears welling up, about a new treatment that could help you but was very expensive. And I couldn't just sit around and do nothing. Azalea brought a hand to her mouth, realization dawning. Oh, Cinia, my brave girl, she murmured, pulling her daughter into a hug. You didn't have to carry this burden alone. Cinia clung to her mother, letting the tears flow freely. I was scared, Mom. Scared of losing you. And I thought if I could raise the money, if I could help somehow. Azalea pulled back slightly, cupping Cinia's face in her hands. Listen to me, Cinia. You are the most important thing in my life. I don't want you sacrificing your childhood, your education, anything for my illness. Do you understand? Yes, Mom. Cinia nodded, though a spark of determination still flickered in her eyes. But Mom, what if the treatment works? What if we can make you better? Azalea sighed, a sad smile gracing her lips. Life doesn't always work out the way we want it to, my love. Sometimes we have to accept things as they are and make the best of the time we have. No! Cinia exclaimed, shaking her head vehemently. I'm not giving up. I can't. Just then, Don Ramon's voice gently interrupted. Excuse me for intruding, the old man said, approaching with slow steps. But I believe I have a say in this matter. Azalea looked at the florist curiously. Don Ramon, you knew about this? The old man nodded, an expression of guilt and determination on his wrinkled face. I did, Mrs. And I must say, your daughter is one of the bravest, most hard-working people I know. She has been working tirelessly, not just to earn money, but to learn and grow. Cinia looked at Don Ramon with gratitude as Azalea processed this new information. But why didn't you tell me? Azalea asked, confusion lacing her voice. Don Ramon smiled softly. Sometimes love makes us do crazy things. Cinia just wanted to protect you, to give you hope without worrying you further. Azalea looked at her daughter, a newfound understanding in her eyes. Oh, my little flower, you've carried such a heavy burden. Cinia wiped her tears, straightening. I know you think I'm too young to understand, to help, but I'm not. I've learned so much these last few months, about flowers, about business, about life, and most of all, I've learned that it's never too late to fight for what you love. Don Ramon nodded approvingly. And she's not alone in this fight. The whole community is behind her. Professor Lucia, her classmates, even the customers at the shop. They've all been touched by Cinia's determination. Azalea looked around, noticing for the first time the supportive gazes of Professor Lucia, Mateo, Iris, and the other students who had gathered at a distance, respecting their privacy but clearly concerned. I don't know what to say, Azalea murmured, overwhelmed with emotion. Cinia took her mother's hands in hers. Say we'll fight this together, Mom. Say you won't give up. Azalea gazed at her daughter, seeing not just the child she had raised, but the strong young woman she was becoming. All right, she said finally, a trembling smile gracing her lips. We'll fight this together. Don Ramon beamed. And you won't be alone. In fact, I have a proposition. What if we turn this school project into something bigger? We could organize a charity event, a flower festival. The whole community could participate. We'd not only raise funds for your treatment, Mrs., but also teach others about the healing power of flowers. Cinia's eyes lit up with hope. Do you think we could do it, Don Ramon? The florist chuckled confidently. With your talent and determination, little one, I believe we can accomplish anything. Azalea, though still visibly shaken, slowly nodded. If this is truly what you want to do, Cinia, then I'll support you. But promise me you won't neglect your education or your health. I promise, Mom, Cinia replied, hugging her mother tightly. Professor Lucia, who had been listening quietly, stepped closer. Count me in for whatever you need, she said with a warm smile. I'm sure the whole school will want to participate in this project. Mateo, unable to contain himself any longer, rushed towards Cinia. We did it, Cin, he exclaimed, embracing his friend. Well, technically not yet, Cinia laughed, hugging him back, but we will together. Iris, tears in her eyes but a bright smile on her face, joined the hug. I want to help too, she said with determination. I can make posters and help with the arrangements. As the group merged in a collective embrace, Cinia felt a new hope blossom in her heart. The road ahead would still be difficult, fraught with challenges and obstacles. But she wasn't alone anymore. She had her mother, her friends, Don Ramon, and a whole community behind her. Looking at the smiling faces around her, Cinia knew that no matter what happened, they would face the future together. And just like the flowers she loved so much, they would find a way to bloom, even in the most difficult of circumstances. The sun began to set on the horizon, painting the sky in warm hues, reminiscent of the flower petals that had brought so many people together. It was the end of a pivotal day, but also the beginning of a new adventure, an adventure filled with hope, love, and the transformative power of a little girl and her flowers.